The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back talking baseball in the zone. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and it is a year-end special. I've got a full house of folks that want to talk some ball, and it's New Year's Eve, at least the morning thereof, and we're going to run down what was important to us, significant, memorable, and in our lives in the year 2017 in our baseball lives. Gene, the Yankee-hating machine is here. How are you, Gene?
I'm just fine.
Gene Hutmaker. He is the host of the St. Louis Cardinals podcast on this very station. And enjoying doing it, are you, Gene?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's good. And who else is here? David Hubler is here. David Hubler of authorship fame, wrote The Nats and Grays, terrific World War II baseball history, and that's been getting to know you this year, David, has been, and your work has been one of the highlights of my 2017 baseball year. So,
well, thank you. Thank you very
much.
much, Ralph. That's quite a nice compliment, and I could say the same about you and the whole network here, and the friends I've made. Including, well, George I knew somewhat beforehand, but it's always good to talk with George and Ronnie.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Mm-hmm.
George is an absolute font of memories about what I consider to be the golden age of baseball. And golden in the sense, we're not talking money. We're talking a time when the world was different. It was just, in a way, the youth of today can't imagine the difference in lifestyle in the 40s and 50s than the way it is today. Just unbelievable. We grow up, we're in an age where every morning we listen to the news for some sort of something that will offend our sensibilities as human beings. We didn't have that. We didn't have the discord between people. You could be a Republican and you could be a Democrat, and you'd have things in common. You'd have a way of life that there wasn't constant conflict. You could be a Republican, a Keating, for instance, a New York senator who, although was a Republican, had socialistic ways about him, and he could go across the aisle. You don't have politicians doing that. You don't and supposedly they represent us as people. We are terribly we're polarized, let's put it that way. And we weren't that way in the 50s and 60s, and our sports reflected it. Can you guys comment on that?
I can certainly make a comment about that while you're talking about that, Ralph, because it dated back, long before the 50s and 60s into the 40s when my dad was playing. And just an example was throwing out the first ball at Griffith Stadium. I mean, that was as bipartisan as you could find. I mean, nobody was going to be booing the President of the United States. They all stood in respect, and it was something that the players enjoyed. And the President of the United States enjoyed being part of the, the crowd at Griffith Stadium and then at RFK Stadium. I mean, that was a way of life. To start the baseball season was always having the President of the United States throw out that first ball. So it was a very enjoyable experience for everybody.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
No one booing the president. I'll give you an example. In the 50s, Ike was president, and he had been president of Columbia. He was the head of the college in New York. And Columbia played Army. And it was at Bakersfield, I think it was. And I'm a kid, and I'm watching Ike go from the sidelines of Army in one half to the sidelines of Columbia in the other half. He attends an Army. I thought that was so cool at that.
Yeah.
And it's one of my memories. You wouldn't have that today. You couldn't wouldn't have a president come out, especially in these times.
Right, right. So true.
Well, if you remember when I was at the game when George W. Bush threw out the first pitch at the new Nats Park, and the booing was quite loud. And I remember he even wore a bulletproof vest under his Nationals jacket. And he came out and threw first pitch from the mound, and that's what we had devolved to. A very partisan crowd.
You know what, David? I agree with what you're saying. And in the past, they started that as with Bush, I guess, throwing out the first ball from the mound. But in the past, the president of the United States would always throw out the first ball from the stands.
Right.
And he'd throw it to the players. Then the players would scramble, and it was a great honor to get the ball. You take it to the president. He would autograph it. You get a picture and all that kind of thing. And I believe that started with Taft back in 1911, doing that. And it's now evolved into, well, they don't even have it anymore. But when Bush did it, he did it from the mound. I personally like the pomp and circumstance of having the president arrive at the ballpark in whether it be his limousine or whatever, go into the stands, sit with the people, take the ball, throw it out into the assembled players, and that was a tradition. And that's all been lost now.
You know, Walter Johnson had collected 6 autographed balls from 6 presidents.
Yes, he did.
And this was his prized collection, which was stolen at one point and later recovered by the FBI. But he always cherished that because that was still part of the tradition of throwing out the first ball at Griffith Stadium.
Yeah, it was, David, and I think we had Hank Thomas on a couple of months ago, Hank being Walter's grandson, talking about that very subject, about those baseballs being lost and then eventually recovered. But, I was surprised about 2 years ago. Marty Katina, just an average pitcher with the Expansion Senators, on his own, sent me a photograph that Kennedy had autographed for Marty and Jimmy Pearsall in the presidential box at RFK Stadium in 1962. Marty was so happy about that event. He said, George, that was the highlight of my life. Having the President of the United States shake my hand, meet me, talk about baseball for a couple minutes, and I have that photograph, and I have the ball as one of my prized possessions.
Oh, wow.
Ralph,
he sent you the photograph or a copy?
He sent me a copy of it because he had made a copy, but he put a little note on there to me. He said, George, this is my, this is a print of my original, photograph from JFK in 1962.
How cool.
That's
Very
so cool. I think, Ralph, that Chad's on. I
am on. I think everything
changed
after. I think everything changed after Nixon, though. After Watergate, none of the presidents were put on those pedestals anymore.
Yeah, I think a lot of that did happen from that point on, Chad. It was a totally different world. But, I also have pictures of Kennedy, and I know this would never happen today because of security, but pictures of Kennedy and Vice President Lyndon Johnson standing right next to him in the presidential box. Now, today you can imagine what the Secret Service would say about something like that. It would never happen.
Right. No.
Yeah, but look, teams don't even want to go to the White House anymore. That used to be the biggest honor. You'd be so proud if your team won and got to go to the White House. Now They don't even want to go.
Right.
Well, Chad, we were talking about that, how we're at such a polarization, and it wasn't that way when we were growing up. So
No.
that's kind of sad. Let's get to the topic. I want to go around the room and keep it up to date. The year 2017 in baseball, what it meant to you. We have Ronnie Rabinovitz is here, Chet Rubin, David Hubler, and George Case III. So let's start with David Hubler. What did this year mean to you, baseball-wise? What did you take away from it? And what will you remember about 2017?
Well, Chad may not want to hear this, but for me, it was the great resurgence of the Yankees that came back, who came back this year, especially in the embodiment of great hitting and great home run hitting, especially from Aaron Judge and the rest of that team, which was a big surprise because they were not expected to do very well this year. They were supposedly in a rebuilding mode, and they came within one game of going to the World Series, which I thought was a remarkable achievement for a team and a city that demands excellence year in and year out. And they've got a fellow now in Judge, and I don't want to detract from the other guys on the team, but Judge seems to embody all of the good things about baseball, some of which have been lost over the years when we talk about looking back over the sport. There have always been, the clowns and the cut-ups and sometimes even the crooks, but we've always looked for the players who embodied the game and played the game correctly, and I think Judge is definitely one of them, and I look forward to watching him for many years.
Beautiful. And as you say, taking nothing away from the other two, you've got Stanton acquired and Sanchez, who's a terrific hitting catcher, and combining a good hitting and catching.
And also, don't forget Bird at first base. He had a terrific first year with a good left-hand hitting hitter in Yankee Stadium. People seem to forget, or some of the sports writers do, in fact, forget about the potential for Bird at first base.
And I think if they clear the decks with Ellsbury, that Hicks will be a terrific center fielder for them.
Yep.
As well. He's much younger. And although I think he has enough left that there are teams he can help. My Giants, my Mets, for instance, could very well be upgraded in center field by Ellsbury. So
that's true. That's very true.
And he'll bring something back in return to add to the killing that the Yankees made over the last couple of years, trading away Chapman and getting prospects and then getting Chapman back and prospects for Miller. They're in pretty good shape. And
yep.
I have to say, Gene doesn't like that, I know, but it makes for a much more interesting baseball world when the Yankees and the Mets are doing well. That's, as a Met fan, I can only hope that that'll happen someday.
Yeah, well, I've always equated it to Broadway. I mean, if you want to see the best in show business, you go to New York and you go to Broadway. And I think there's a sort of holdover. It doesn't apply to the Knicks over the last millennium, but
no,
but in terms of
they've had their moments where even the Jets had that one year that we can say, wow, that was terrific. The Rangers have won a cup now, and the Knicks had more than one. They had 2 championship years with
Willis Reed and those guys. Yep.
Oh yeah.
But I think baseball still is the premier, despite the fact that everybody supposedly loves the NFL. I think baseball still has the cachet of being the sport that your city wants to do well in and year out.
Hey, listen, a city that from 1949 to 1964, a New York team or a derivative of a New York team, I think the Dodgers in 59 were in L.A. by that time.
Yes, right.
But
they were, yeah.
They won every year from 49 to 64. They were in it with very few exceptions, if any. When the Giants and Dodgers weren't, when the Dodgers and Yankees weren't in it, the Giants were. And you grow up in that era, it's almost like a sense of entitlement. You almost feel like, well, this is where the World Series should be played every year. And to the rest of the country who's listening to this, it's only something that a true New Yorker, a native New Yorker like David and I can really appreciate. And you have that. And then when your teams go bad after that, you almost feel ripped off, like when the Yankees.
When the late 60s, early 70s, yeah.
Right.
But
Exactly.
you know, one other thing I'd like to mention on that, because we started off talking about, the politics and the division in the countries. The only division in New York was if you were a Yankee fan, you didn't want any part of the Dodgers, and if you were a Dodger fan, you didn't want any part of the Yankees. And the Giants sort of fitted in between. They didn't want any part of either one of them. So that was where the divisions were, not in politics.
Right.
Yeah, I think, let me step in here a second. I think, Gene, are you still on there?
Yeah, yes, I'm here.
Yeah, I think this sort of segues into your love of the of the Yankees, Gene. You might want to talk about your book, Banned in the Bronx, and the fact of being a Yankee hater, and what your take on what David was talking about with regard to New York City and the division of loyalty between the teams.
Well, a lot of people don't realize it, but 1949 to the second game in 1957, every World Series game was won by a New York team.
Right. That's right.
Every game, not just a series.
Yeah, that's an amazing stat. I didn't realize that, Gene. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, I didn't realize that either.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
I have a question for you guys. We'll start with Gene. Well, we know the answer with Gene. Oh, no, we don't. Who would you, Gene? We're going to reverse the question. You hate the Yankees. If you didn't hate the Yankees, what team would you hate more than the Yankees? Would you hate more than any other?
Well, I probably hated the Dodgers because they always did it with the Cardinals.
Okay. All right. Well, the rest of you, it's going to be the other way around.
Yeah.
George Case, the third, if you didn't love the Washington Senators, which team would you have loved?
Well, probably, again, selfishly, probably the Twins, because my dad's association with the Twins. And then the other team would have been the Yankees, because my dad was, worked for the Yankees a couple of years when he managed in Oneonta. So, I certainly, followed the Yankees, and the fact that I knew some of the Yankee players, and, it was a team that I was well acquainted with. And
when you were a kid, was there another team besides Washington that you kind of liked, maybe a National League team?
Well, I think living in the Philadelphia area, I think I liked the Phillies. Because the Phillies were on their ascendancy then. I mean, the A's were pretty much done, and the Phillies really, once they had the whiz kids and, started to become a pennant contender, and then, going into the 70s and 80s with strong ball clubs, and I think the Phillies were certainly a team that I followed because of the proximity, and the fact is I also knew, some of the Phillies players. I knew some of the Phillies broadcasters, and it was an interesting team for me to follow.
Okay, I think I know Ronnie Rabinovitz. Obviously, if you weren't a Dodger fan, you'd have been a Brave fan. Am I correct?
No, just a Dodger fan.
Okay. You can't even imagine that being a Dodger fan. How about you,
No.
Chad Rubin?
Anybody but the Yankees and the Red Sox. I hate those two teams.
That's an unusual combination. Usually, as far as I'm concerned, any year that we beat out the Red Sox is a good year. The same thing applies in Boston. But to have those two as your most hated teams seems unusual, to say the least.
It seems because they're the only two teams that are ever on TV every week. Every week there's a Yankee or a Red Sox game on. I get tired of those two teams.
Well, then you should hate the network. You shouldn't hate the teams.
Well, but that's what happens after a while.
Yeah, it's all ratings. It's all ratings.
Yeah.
You watch this year, because with the way that, as I described earlier, the way the Yankees came from nowhere last year, they're going to be on TV a lot this year. So gird your loins.
I happen to agree with you, David. I think that's exactly what it is. It's ratings.
Sure.
The money drives the game today, big time.
That's right.
Yeah, but right now the Yankees also have some of the best collection of talent. I'm not going that way. I just, as a Midwesterner, you'd like to see other teams on TV. That's all.
No, that's a legitimate remark. That's
absolutely
legitimate.
Yeah. Hey, Ronnie, what'd you take from this year that you're going to remember forever?
Well, two things. First of all, the Dodgers, of course, with 104 wins, and one game short of the World Series. The fifth year in a row that they won the division. And also, I'm very proud of Minnesota Twins, who absolutely, I think, had a fantastic year. From 102 losses last year to being right in the hunt all the way through. I think it was fabulous. And I think you're going to see a lot of changes. You're going to see more about the Twins coming forward. I think that they're sharp. I think the management people, the general manager and his assistant, are doing a terrific job. They've got a couple of new. They got Fernando Rondon. They got Pineda, and they're talking about getting Mike Napoli or Darvish. So they're not done yet, and they're building a winner. They're going to build a good team. I think they have.
You could look back. This will be the start of them really turning it around.
Yeah.
Because turning it around, they did. I don't remember what their exact record was last year, but they almost reversed it, if I'm not mistaken.
They had 102 losses last year. And this year they were, all the way through. Remember, George, we talked about the Twins?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I said, you're okay. You're okay.
No, you did. You were the one who was really calling the fact that, I used to kid you about the Dodgers, but the fact that
right.
you mentioned about the Twins, having such a great year, and then they fell back a little bit, and then they picked themselves up and did great. Right. I think you're right about the Twins. They are certainly a team of the future. They've got some great young talent, and if they get pitching, they could be really a team to be reckoned with.
That's right. What do you think, Chad?
I was very proud of the Twins. It was nice having baseball all summer long, finally, not being out of it by, July 1st. But the Stanton trade really is, to me, is bothersome. And I've never thought this before, but the haves and have-nots are really starting to come forward in baseball. And I'm worried about the future for small market teams.
Right.
The money now is starting to get silly money. When relievers are getting $8 to $12 million a year, and they're just setup men, that's scary.
Chad, I happen to agree with you. I personally think money is driving the game, but the fact is that the salaries, the contracts, everything is just outrageous today. And I happen to be I was doing a little research the other day because I was talking to somebody about my dad, and I found an article that my dad had been quoted back in around 1945, I think, and they were talking about salaries of players. And my dad had mentioned, he said, well, back in 45, we thought there were about 10 players in Major League Baseball that were making more than $10,000 a year. and the highest paid during that era was Joe DiMaggio at $100,000. Now, I've always, mentioned, can you imagine what a DiMaggio, a Ted Williams, Feller, all these great players of the past, what they would command today in salaries? I mean, it would be unbelievable.
They asked DiMaggio that question time and time again.
It's just inflation. Figure what the inflation rate is. It's maybe 10 times higher than it was in 1945. So you take that $10,000 salary, and it becomes a $100,000 salary. If you look at it from that standpoint. But
you're right. You're right, Ralph. But it doesn't become a $10 million salary.
No.
Exactly.
George,
there's no way to account for that. That becomes monopoly money, and it almost cheapens the game when you think about it. When you think about the fact that a kid can sign out of high school for a bonus that will take care of his family, his kids' family, and his grandkids' family, just that. Where does the incentive to improve come from? To make the major leagues, to be the best possible player he can be, basically. Where does that come from if you're set up with the money going in?
Well, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I can recall when Steinbrenner was still alive, he was keen on this pitcher from, I think, South Carolina, and I forget his name, and they gave him this outrageous bonus. It was well over $1 million, and this guy, I guess this was about in the 80s.
Britton Taylor.
What's that?
Taylor. His name was Taylor.
Taylor?
He was a tall, lanky black kid who had an
right. That's right. I forget his. Brian was his first name, wasn't it?
Brian Taylor, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the kid went out and he blew out his arm in some bar fight, and he never even, I don't think he ever put on a uniform after that.
Never got a lot above A-ball.
No. There are a lot of, it's not always the money. There are for guys who have played the game all their life, they still want, for the most part, to see how good they can be and judge themselves against the competition. But I just want to make one quick remark. George had mentioned about how much money DiMaggio was asked that question numerous times during his years of retirement. And the one remark that always stood out was they said, how much do you think you'd get now if you were playing? And he said, I'd own the team.
Right.
And DiMaggio always had a great self-worth issue. He always, somewhat, the greatest living baseball player.
Right.
That's how they always introduced.
That's the way they wanted to have. That's the way Joe wanted to be introduced.
Yes, he insisted on it.
He wanted to be the last player introduced. Yep. And he had to have that little script about, baseball's greatest living player. So that was that was part of his, to attract fans and to talk to people about Joe DiMaggio. And also, the other little thing that he did is that for his early couple years as an old-timer, Joe would actually play. His last few years, he would not play. He would wear the uniform. He would just come out, doff his cap and all that kind of stuff. But he said he did not want the fans to see Joe DiMaggio as an old guy. They wanted to remember him as a great player. And so he did not want to go out there in an old-timers game and try to play, with guys 50, 60, 70 years old that can barely walk and yet play the game. So that was his little bit of baseball history that he insisted upon along with his introduction.
And also signing in the sweet spot. That was his spot on the baseball.
What bothers me about the money in the sport today is baseball's always been a commoner sport. Anybody could go. Kids could go. But
that's true. Yeah.
What's the cheapest ticket at Yankee Stadium?
Yeah, I know.
Chad, it's corporate now. And when they build the new stadiums and they put the luxury boxes and they have all the marketing contracts, that's all corporate. And the average fan that David and Gene and, we're used to talking about back in the 40s and 50s that would go and sit in a bleacher seat for 50 cents, that doesn't happen anymore.
And now, look at what the tickets in Wrigley Field are for bleacher seats now. They're not even general admission. Those are season tickets now.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's crazy.
That's what's going to.
But I asked, my big thing is, kids can't watch the World Series because
right, Ralph.
They can't afford to go to
the All-Star game.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Tuesday night, a school
night. They're played at night,
and
they're played at night. And I've had many conversations with people about baseball, and I say, hey, you know what? Baseball has got to somehow appeal to the young kids. And the way to do it is to expose them to the game. Now, if they can't go to a game with their parents or whatever because they can't afford it, and now they can't watch it on television because it's played at night when they're in bed or studying for school, you're going to lose the young kids who used to be out there on the ball fields from morning till night. They're not there now. I'm looking right now where I live. I'm looking across the street. And there's nobody that ever comes into a baseball field and plays the game other than if they have a practice or a game. They just don't do it.
I'm looking out my window and I don't see anybody playing baseball here, but it's 15 below zero here.
I didn't even want to mention that, Ronnie, but I'm talking about when there isn't snow and ice on the ground. I mean, it's baseball weather, and when the kids would have been out there playing, and they're not. Now, obviously, they're not going to play in the middle of the wintertime here. Now, maybe in Southern California they would, or California or Florida, wherever it is, but up here in the Northeast. But still, in the spring and summer, when the kids were in the 40s and 50s, and the fields were not ever empty, they were always filled with kids playing ball.
That's right. You could go to any neighborhood, and you could see kids playing baseball.
Right.
Yeah, but now it's basketball. You'll see that all day long. Even in some of the warmer, cold cities in the winter, they'll play. They don't do that with baseball anymore.
Yep, that's true.
And I think it's because it's not a commoner sport anymore. People have been priced out of playing the game. Why play it if I can't?
Well, basketball's not cheap either, though.
No, but basketball's always been a niche sport.
Yeah.
Basketball was always a niche sport until the last, 25 years?
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, basketball, I mean, the kids today, because they're playing in the playgrounds, they're playing in the, we've talked about this before, it's an inner city kind of game, and it really takes, it's less money. The big money is at the college level or pro level, but the kids can grab a basketball and go out and play in a street or on a rim and a hoop, and they can play. Where in baseball, you got to have 9 kids on a team, and you got to have the equipment and all that kind of thing. So it is. But on the other hand, baseball has lost the young generation, and the kids are either playing video games or they're looking to be a football star or a basketball star. They're not looking to be a baseball star.
But you want to know what
they don't play it.
But a lot of those kids can still round up a lot of kids, and they'll play soccer.
Yep.
I mean,
you know why? I have my theory. My theory about soccer, why they call it the most popular sport in the world, it reflects just what you guys have been saying. Because it is very, very inexpensive to play. You don't even need a rim. All you need, you could play with a dead goat's head or a pig's bladder that you blow. No, seriously, in the slums all over the world, kids can play soccer by making anything a goalpost and use anything that's round and that they can kick. And I think that's the origin of its worldwide popularity, and plus the fact that any kid can kick a ball. When I was a camp counselor, and if I had the little kids, I would say, okay, come on, we're going to play soccer. And any kid on the field there could kick a ball. You didn't have to have the athletic skills to catch a ball or to hit a ball, but any kid could kick a ball. And I think what?
But wasn't that like that when you guys were growing up with stickball or?
Yeah, but you didn't. There's no professional league for stickball. Sure, we had stickball. We also had other games like curveball and slap ball.
Yeah, half ball. You have all kinds of things.
Box ball. We
box
play with
ball.
The cracks in the sidewalk.
Yeah, exactly.
And the stoop. You knock
hit it off the stoop ball.
Right.
Yeah.
Or swat.
All you needed was a Spalding, which I have in the house just in case anybody wants to play. I still have a Spalding.
If the game breaks out, it's going to be at the Hubler house.
Yeah, we even have a curb.
David, is the color of your Spalding pink?
Pink, yeah, of course.
Okay, there you go.
Of course.
If I may comment on basketball, my son lives in a very expensive area, and it's predominantly Indians from India, and I would say 1/4 of the houses have one of them portable basketballs in their driveway, in their 3-car driveway.
Oh.
So there's basketball rims all over the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And they're out there, believe me, they're out there playing. I live by there, and they're out there playing all the time, shooting baskets.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not even brought up in an American culture.
Right.
Well, I remember seeing a basketball court in the Vatican. When I was touring the Vatican, there was a basketball court.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, this is a pontiff who could take you deep right into the
And he's a Cardinal fan.
He goes both left. He goes left and right.
And right. Yeah, that's right.
There you go.
Hard to find in a pontiff, let alone I don't know what else. I'm assuming.
But he can't dunk.
No. But he's from a time when they played the game at a different level. You played below the rim in those days. He's got a great set shot, though. He's got a two-handed set shot. A Carl Braun two-handed set shot.
Right, yeah.
Dolph Shays.
That's it.
Dolph Shays, exactly. And when he you could see the Pope making the shot and putting that right arm up like Smith at the Olympics.
But getting back to this, the money issue in baseball, I think that MLB is trying through various means, including the tax on salaries, cumulative salaries on a team, to sort of bring some kind of normality to it. And look, it was the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim or whatever they're calling themselves this year, that signed the Japanese superstar, supposedly superstar, and they got him. So I mean, there are ways, because everybody thought he was going to the Yankees too, if you recall the press. This kid's going to New York. Didn't happen. So it's not always a question of the money so much.
Well, wait a minute. He went to L.A. He's not like he's going to Minnesota or St.
Yeah, but they're still playing in Anaheim. It's a different, It's the
LA.
Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
Still have a monster.
It's a bigger market, but
it's bigger. But
how much did you guys draw when you win? I think it comes down to a team will draw when they win, no matter what the market is.
No question. But what bothers me is the Marlins. The Marlins have all this young talent, and now they're trading it away. Why?
Because nobody goes. Well, they built that stadium in such a terrible spot. Friends of mine down there who love baseball went to the Nats games here religiously, or even the Senators years ago. They don't go near that place. It's in a terrible neighborhood. Yeah, it's in a horrible neighborhood. The parking is terrible. You got to drive down 95 to get over there in most cases. And nobody wants to go there.
But my point is that we're seeing teams like them in Oakland constantly having to sell off their top talent just to stay alive as a franchise. And that scares me as a baseball fan, that there's teams like that. A team like Tampa Bay can't get a good stadium. We've never had a true baseball stadium.
But Tampa Bay and Oakland have the same problems getting a stadium. And don't mix in Oakland with a small market team. They're not a small
I
market.
agree.
The only reason they get that luxury tax, which is quickly disappearing, is not because of the small market, but because of the dilapidated ballpark that they're playing in. And,
but my point is we have too many teams like that I think are on the brink of that, and that scares me as a baseball fan. I mean,
well, you could say, was it overexpansion? Was it expanding too quickly?
Well, how do they let owners buy a team that can't afford to be in the league? I don't understand that. Just because Derek Jeter's name's attached to it doesn't mean they're going to be good owners, and that bothers me.
On the contrary, if you were a Miami fan, this isn't the first time they've broken up good teams.
No, but there comes a point of. But every time they do it, they're losing another fan, and they're not gaining.
Right.
And South Florida should be a hotbed of baseball.
Yeah. Well. Is there anything in South Florida in the works for a new ballpark or a different ballpark, or is this the one that was recently built?
Yeah, that was the one that was recent built. The one where the Marlins play. Yeah,
a few years ago.
That's right.
See, generally, what happens when you put a ballpark in, it rejuvenates the area. San Francisco's a great example. They put a ballpark in an industrial area, and there are now all kinds of restaurants and bars and stuff.
Same thing is happening in D.C. They built Nats Park in an area that was just totally run down along the river. There was nothing there. The only reason anybody went down that way is because the highway went through there to head north. And now you can't believe the number of cranes that are there, the condo units that have gone up. All around the stadium.
Same thing in Minneapolis,
Yeah, they put it in an area that wasn't very nice. Now there's restaurants and everything's popping up.
It's popping up,
places. It's phenomenal what they've done down here.
They really
very impressed.
And it's a real stadium. It's not one of these domed
it's gorgeous.
AstroTurf.
No, it's not.
It's a gorgeous stadium.
Yeah.
And then you got the new Viking Stadium downtown. I mean, it's booming. Downtown is booming.
Yeah, thank goodness they've done away with those multi-purpose donut-shaped stadiums, for everything.
Yeah.
Gosh, they were terrible.
Cutter ones like they had in Philadelphia, the Shea Stadium.
There were 6 or 7 cities that the players. I talked to a couple of players when Jeff Torberg, when he was coaching and managing. Jeff and I used to talk about it. He said, "Yeah, George, we go into some of those cookie cutter stadiums. The only way we knew where we were, we'd see the uniforms of the other team. They were all so similar in their layout. They were truly multi-purpose stadiums. They were built for baseball and football. Where today, for the most part, you have 2 different stadiums in the cities. You have a football stadium and you have a baseball stadium.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys, this has been terrific. I wish you all a very, very happy New Year. I'm so delighted that me and Chad have recovered and are rehabbing and back, and that's terrific. Thanks, guys.
Great.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yes, Happy New
Year to everybody.
Take care, everybody.
We'll be back next week. Next week it'll be a twin show, Twin Senators. And we'll be back same time, same bat station. Thank you all for listening. If you're out there and enjoy our offerings, I ask that you box up some lightly used children's books and take them to the Head Start program in whatever community you're in. Kids need to read. They need to develop a passion, and they need to become school ready. So do that, and you'll feel good about it, and have a happy New Year, and more more importantly, have a healthy New Year. Be well,
Bye-bye, everybody. Happy New Year.
Thanks, Ralph.
Thanks
George.
again,
Happy New Year.
everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.